Okay, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you this morning. We're very excited about this project and working with all of you. As Nikelia mentioned, the CCRAF is really an important space for providing knowledge sharing, not only within a country, amongst different actors within a country, but with the different countries in the region. And today what we wanted to share with you a little bit is about the first multi-country project in the Caribbean for agriculture financed by the Green Climate Fund. As you all may know, the Green Climate Fund is one of the biggest green funders in the world that was established several years ago. It's been running about 5 years now to provide finance to countries that are party to the UNFCCC, which is almost all of them, 196, I believe, or two, to support the transition to a low emissions, more resilient world. And this is increasingly important, as you all may have seen, the recent science that has come out from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says every day the climate risks are getting greater. And one of the sectors most at risk is the agricultural sector. In short, because it depends on the climate, and millions of people, billions of people throughout the world depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, and everybody in the world depends on agriculture, of course, for the food that they eat. So ICA, together with 9 countries in the region that you can see there on the screen, has been working for several years now. We pulled together this GCF Readiness and Preparatory Support Project. What is a readiness project? Well, the Green Climate Fund has this readiness funding, and then they also have funding for up to $10 million per project for ideas that are already proven and can be scaled. And then the regular size projects, which can be anywhere from $1 to $500 million. But in the case of the readiness, it's exactly as it sounds. It's funding that each country has access to every year. Each country has $1 million of readiness funding per year that they can use to build capacity, to strengthen institutions, to conduct studies, and to prepare proposals for larger scale projects from the Green Climate Fund. And in this case, ECO worked with 9 countries to pull together this project, which is a 2-year project of $1.2 million. It has 24 projects involved, and the lead nationally designated authority is the Ministry of Environment and Housing from the Bahamas. So they've shown great leadership in bringing together the countries from the region. And this project is specifically to work together to accelerate climate investment and action in the agriculture sector in the region. And it's based on the premise that we cannot achieve the many goals of the agriculture sector without addressing climate change, which means we're not going to be able to achieve our poverty reduction, our food security and nutrition, the reduction of non-communicable diseases, productivity, livelihood, foreign exchange goals of the sector if we don't take into account climate change as we're working towards that. But at the same time, we cannot address climate change without the agriculture sector becoming a really important part of the solution, both from a low emissions development and from a resilience building standpoint. And as my colleague Chani, who many of you know, likes to say, agriculture has traditionally been the ugly duckling. A lot of, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the reports out in the news where they're saying agriculture is really a huge part of the problem for the environmental impact that it has. But at the same time, this means that agriculture is a really fundamental part of the solution. And so we need to help it become that and change it from the ugly duckling into the beautiful swan of the story. Okay, so the goal of this project is really to help advance towards a climate responsive agriculture sector for the Caribbean. And this is based on a premise that if and again, this is generalized because it's across many countries, but if Caribbean countries recognize the key role of agriculture as a fundamental part of the climate solution in the region and invest in compiling the necessary data information to better direct decisions and guide the sectoral response to climate change, then the countries will be able to better design and execute effective agricultural development programs that are aligned with both national and global climate and development priorities, because we'll have these priorities better identified and institutionalized with needs of the sector and of the farmers and different actors across the value chain clearly identified, as well as the systems and processes in place to support coordinated investment, both in mitigation and adaptation. And as you all know, most of the time in agriculture, investment in resilience building can also support the reduction in emissions, for example, through agroforestry systems, through improved soil management, and many other techniques. And what the impact that we're really hoping for is a recognition of the key role of agriculture for meeting both national and international climate and sustainability commitments, and a greater ability to make better directed and effective investments to enhance sectoral and national plans and achieve the climate resilience and low emissions development that we all need. So we're using adaptation and resilience building and productivity growth as the entry point, and also looking for these mitigation co-benefits. And so how does this project propose to do it? Well, as I mentioned to you, readiness projects do not really permit action on the ground per se. What they focus on is building better participation and engagement, conducting studies, and of course, developing project proposals. And so this project really seeks to understand how agricultural sector stakeholders are currently engaged in the Green Climate Fund processes and broader climate processes, such as the development of the NDCs or the sectoral adaptation plans or the national adaptation plans and low emissions development strategies, and identify ways we can enhance and support greater participation from the sector in these decisions. We also are looking to strengthen the information and evidence base for decision-making. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, and combine this with strengthened capacity in the region, strengthened information, and an insertion of some of this into the institutional or within the institutional priorities to achieve a more climate responsive agricultural sector as a whole. And so this is, of course, more of a medium-term vision. This project in and of itself is not going to achieve that. However, we are working to put in place the groundwork together with all of you to do this. And the project is using an inclusive approach and a gender-sensitive approach, focusing on both including women and youth in the process. And to do this, we're completing a whole bunch of activities. One is a barrier analysis to better understand what is inhibiting greater investment in climate responsive agriculture in the region. We're looking at the different stakeholder engagement mechanisms. Again, how is the agriculture participating in the decision-making of what's prioritized in terms of climate finance? You know, who gets access and when and where, and who's making these decisions? We're pulling together a trade-off analysis to understand if we invest in certain policies or response measures for climate change on the ground, what will the impact be on food security, on farmer income, on productivity, on emissions, or on other ecosystem services, to better understand what are the best investments we can make across multiple goals. We're looking at climate action inventories. What's actually going on? What's the state of the art in the country at this nexus of agriculture and climate change? What are the different strategies, policies, international commitments, projects, and mechanisms that are in place to address agriculture in the sector, or address climate change in the agricultural sector? Where are the greenhouse gas inventories for the agricultural sector, and how can we work to improve them in terms of accuracy, in terms of data used, in terms of the institutional arrangements necessary to complete those? How do we know where the emissions are coming from in the sector? What are the tendencies we're anticipating in the future, and what are the best opportunities for reducing emissions for the sector? what are different guidelines and protocols we can use to collect this information and insert it into the priorities of the ministries? How can we strengthen evidence-based decision-making? Each one of the studies that we're doing has a training component with technicians from the ministries of agriculture and others. For example, on the greenhouse gas inventories, we're working on training representatives from the ministries and how to better conduct those processes. At the same time, we're providing a training of the trainers to help technicians understand what data needs to be collected and why, and who will then go out and train some farmers groups so that we can work on the data gaps that exist. And then, of course, providing some vocational guidelines and information on how we can better include youth into these climate responsive agriculture processes and provide opportunities for them, and pulling this all together in a knowledge portal, which we envision as a one-stop shop for all the different vulnerability analyses and studies and information that exist on agriculture and climate change for the countries involved in this project. We're going to put in one place to try to make that easier for everyone. And really the culmination of this project is going to result in the design of a project proposal more on the lines of multiple millions for the sector, so that we can continue to take action on these gaps and needs and priorities that are identified throughout this project and all the consultations that are being done at different levels. And my colleague Nikelia is going to explain a little bit more about the project ideas we've started to put together through this whole information collection process. So that's a broad overview of the project.